What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we are going to be talking Call of Duty a little bit. I decided to upload this on both channels since this is more of a big picture franchise-wide video, but I'm sure many of you guys have noticed that Modern Warfare 2019 has blown up recently on Steam. In fact, it's been surpassing the concurrent player counts on Steam compared to the current Call of Duty game, which also includes Warzone as well as the previous one, Black Ops 6. And it's been surpassing Battlefield 6 on Steam as well. And this is like a 6.5-year-old game at this point. So what's going on here? What are my thoughts on the game? Because the debate has been reignited in the community. And also a big thing is, I don't think this is a coincidence that we're seeing this happen right now. I think this may actually be giving us a bit of a hint as to what we're going to be seeing with Modern Warfare 4 later this year. So let's dive into this. And the first section, I just wanted to share my 2 cents on the whole debate that's been raging in the community. For a lot of people, this was the best Call of Duty ever made. It's by far their favorite COD. It brought them into the franchise, or it brought them back into the franchise if they had fallen off earlier. And to this day, they absolutely love it. Whereas for others, they despise it. And they feel it led to what we're dealing with right now in Call of Duty, which is massive franchise fatigue. And it was the Call of Duty that, while popular at the time, ended up derailing things big picture. So where do I stand on this? Well, I'm sure many of you guys already know my thoughts on this. And if you guys want to dive much deeper into my thoughts that I'm not really going to expand on too much in today's video, just to keep things a reasonable length, I will leave a link to my final review videos, what I feel they did right and what they did wrong at the time. And that's when the game was much more fresh in my mind as well. But I did want to cover at least the key points of how I feel about this. And we'll start it off with the positive. I think in many ways, Modern Warfare 2019 really did push the franchise forward. And it clearly did bring a ton of people back into the franchise and a bunch of new players in as well. I do think some of that is related to COVID. I think the timing was just right for that game as well. So like a lot of people that weren't really into gaming, they got into gaming suddenly. And when it came to like military shooters, especially like mainstream casual ones, this was the option. This was it. So of course it funneled a lot of people into that. But I don't think that was everything. I honestly think most of the success of this game was due to its packaging rather than the specifics of the gameplay design. At the time, they went for the most realistic looking Call of Duty that was head and shoulders above any other COD at the time when it came to the graphics, the theme, the art style, the animation, just the general attention to detail and polish. It was incredible. They knocked it out of the park in all of those areas. And I really think that's what got people in the door. That's what piqued people's interest, especially the really casual players that didn't just buy Call of Duty year after year after year. The look and feel and packaging of this game is really what caught people's attention and brought them into it. And to top that off, a nice thing they did with this is they actually maintained that grounded identity throughout most of the life cycle of the game. We didn't have crazy, wacky skins 2 weeks after launch or literally at launch or in the beta. In fact, for some of the wackier skins, we didn't get them until like Halloween the following year. So like a year after the game launched, that's when we got like the most crazy skins. And even those ones, relative to many of the ones we've been seeing in recent years with Call of Duty, those ones were really tame. And I think all of that really helped maintain the image for this game. And especially then looking back, we don't look back to the ridiculous things that this game had. We look back to what it actually was throughout most of its life cycle. And that was quite a grounded looking military shooter that was very accessible as well. And by military shooter, I don't mean milsim, I just mean military themed shooter. It maintained the visual identity of a military shooter. And then on top of that, something I'll always give them credit for is the gunplay was actually quite good as well. Just the act of like aiming and shooting your gun felt really good in that game. And so when looking at the big picture of the game and especially the packaging of the game, I think it was excellent. However, for me, the devil is in the details, and there was a combination of so many individual design decisions that made this my least favorite 6v6 Call of Duty multiplayer experience ever. And it still holds that title for me to this day. Yes, even over Modern Warfare 2 in 2022. While that game also had a lot of issues and is quite low on my list, I would still rather play that than Modern Warfare 2019 when it comes to 6v6. And to explain why, again, I'm not going to expand on this too much because my longest video ever on this channel is talking about the things I felt they did wrong and actually getting into the details. I'll try to remember to link that in the description if you're interested in hearing me expand on these a lot more. But just covering the bullet points, of the things that I really didn't like that they did with this game. Something I feel doesn't get talked about enough, they introduced the new spawn system that many in the community call the squad spawn system that we're still sort of dealing with to this day. The other developers, especially Sledgehammer and Treyarch, have gotten a better handle on this and have made it feel a lot less bad. But man, that spawn system really, really harmed the gameplay flow so much in the game, combined with generally not very good map design in my eyes. Obviously, that's a very subjective area, but it really felt like in that game, they often started off with a real area and then tried to turn that into a Call of Duty map, rather than designing a really good map from scratch and then after the fact trying to make it look like a real area. And I think that has some pretty bad gameplay implications, even though it might look really nice. And if you play the game at a really surface level and you don't really understand general map flow and stuff, you might not notice those sort of things. They also had a combination of so many design decisions in the game that heavily encouraged and rewarded super campy playstyles. So like the loudest and easiest to pinpoint footstep audio in franchise history at the time, with no dead silence perk, only a field upgrade, making it extremely difficult to move around the map, especially in the higher skilled lobbies, which was another big issue with this game. Is for many people, they were playing a very different version of the game than other people. So of course that's going to impact their impression. Another thing they did is they removed score streaks from the game, and we went back to a pure kill streak system, so objective game modes weren't rewarding you in the same way that we were used to for playing the objective. And you could sacrifice your most valuable perk tier just to get Point Man, which turned it into point streaks to give you a little bit of a reward for playing the objective, but why would you sacrifice your most important perk tier for that on a regular basis? On top of that, looking at it more big picture, they introduced the matchmaking system that I do feel worked really well for them in the short term. Because again, for those really casual players that were coming back to the franchise after a long time away, or people that have never played a shooter before, they were coming in for the first time, many of them fell in love with this game because they performed so much better than they would have otherwise if this system didn't exist. In saying that though, I do feel this system is largely responsible for the decline over the years, because long term, it leads to a lot of burnout. And I've been calling it since the beginning. Short term, it works. Long term, not so much, as people get burnt out on a system like that that doesn't really highlight your improvement over time or reward improvement. I think that was a terrible addition to the franchise in general. But on top of that, and related to that, Modern Warfare 2019 introduced forced disbanding lobbies, so you could no longer stay with a lobby. That destroyed so much of the social and community aspect of the game, which has always been a big part of the Call of Duty franchise before that point. In fact, it was one of the reasons COD was so successful in the golden age of COD, is it was often a very social experience and you'd stick with the same lobby for hours on end sometimes. And then on top of all of that, they fundamentally changed the entire progression system, and they switched it to more of a seasonal system that hard capped how much you could progress on a season by season basis, which again, I think was a very bad move that we've finally gotten back away from, and we're finally back to the more traditional prestige system that Call of Duty used to have, that many of us at least definitely prefer. So those are just a handful of the jot notes of what I didn't like about that game. There were obviously a bunch of other things in there as well, and a lot more detail I could go into with them. And I have gone into that detail many times in the past. But I guess one last thing here is I do want to give credit to Ground War and Gunfight. I think those were good additions to the game. I thought they were very interesting. I enjoyed my playtime with them. They just didn't really scratch that same itch as a regular 6v6 COD experience for me. And I should also mention, Search and Destroy was not nearly as bad as respawn modes in that game. Search and Destroy was actually pretty decent in Modern Warfare 2019, but I'm just not really much of a Search and Destroy kind of guy. So those are my general thoughts on the game itself. I don't think it was all bad, but the combination of many things made it not a very enjoyable experience for me overall. But now let's talk about what this might mean for this upcoming Call of Duty game. I don't think it's a coincidence that this was the game they chose to put on sale for $6 on Steam right around this time of the year. I really believe they're trying to bring back some of that nostalgia that many have for Modern Warfare 2019, because, as I said, it was an incredibly popular game and many people really look back on it favorably. And I think they're trying to bring this nostalgia back to set the tone in advance of the marketing for Modern Warfare 4, which is likely going to be starting very soon. In fact, if I had to guess, I think they're probably going to start marketing for Modern Warfare 4 a little bit earlier than they have been for recent games, for a handful of reasons, partially because they tend to do that with Infinity Ward games. Another thing is it's been heavily rumored for a while now that they're going to be making another fairly big leap forward with this next Call of Duty game, so they're probably going to want to push marketing on that pretty heavily. Also, Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out later this year, so they're going to have a pretty big marketing push to compete for people's attention with that. And then another big thing is I just feel general perception toward the Call of Duty franchise is like at an all-time low right now. And it's even reached the point where it's not even hatred so much that you see for it, so much as just apathy. And I think that's a lot scarier to see because people have lost the passion, so they don't even care enough to hate on the game. They just don't even care to talk about it at all. And I think that's a big picture issue that they're probably going to want to try to flip around with a very heavy marketing push for the next game. And as far as Modern Warfare 4 goes, I suspect they're going to try to recapture what they did with Modern Warfare 2019, especially with this, again, rumored to be a leap forward. And despite my feelings toward the gameplay of Modern Warfare 2019, I really hope this is the direction they're going when it comes to recapturing the general vibe of the game, as well as the packaging and polish. And I really strongly feel what we're going to be seeing here is, once again, a very grounded military theme with a more serious tone to it and a heavy emphasis on them pushing toward realism, at least aesthetically. I'm not saying it's going to be a mil-sim gameplay-wise. And I do think they're going to be getting rid of a lot of the silliness that you see with many recent Call of Duty games, at the very least within the launch window. And honestly, I'm really surprised this is something they haven't done since the success of Modern Warfare 2019. It's really blown me away that they haven't tried to recapture that up until this point, as they just haven't really leaned into that same sort of tone that we got back in that day. But I think right now, especially, the market is really primed for this, because, I mean, if we look back to the release of Battlefield 6, I still think one of the reasons it was so successful and sold so well up front is there was a massive craving in the FPS community for a more grounded, military-themed game that actually maintained a military aesthetic and didn't get too silly or wasn't space-themed or anything like that. Just a grounded, realistic look to it. I think that's something that a huge portion of the FPS scene is really craving right now, and that's something they had to have been keeping an eye on early on in development for this upcoming Call of Duty game. So I'd be very surprised and also very disappointed if they're not going that route with this next Call of Duty game. Gameplay-wise, I obviously hope they aren't following too closely in the footsteps of Modern Warfare 2019, and this is something I'll likely make a dedicated video on with some of my hopes and expectations for the next Call of Duty game, gameplay-wise. But just as a general statement here, I definitely think it is time to dial back the movement a little bit. As much as I personally enjoy faster-paced Call of Duty games with lots of movement, I like Omni movement, I kind of like the wall bouncing even though it's a little weird at times, and I was a big fan of jetpack CODs, for instance. At the same time though, I acknowledge that that's not what's best for the franchise as a whole. That pushes so many players away, I think unnecessarily, because I don't think crazy movement is necessarily a fundamental pillar of what Call of Duty is. And I do think it's far too polarizing for a franchise that's designed to be appealing to the masses. And so yes, even as somebody that likes movement, I think it's time for them to really dial that back quite a bit. I just hope they don't go too far in the other direction, and I hope they don't equate fast movement speeds and stuff to just fast general pacing, because you can have a reasonably fast-paced Call of Duty without having ridiculous movement techniques or movement speeds or anything like that. There are many other elements that can play into the pacing of the game. And again, I just really hope they don't overcompensate there and end up providing an extremely slow-paced Call of Duty that heavily rewards and encourages that camping playstyle while punishing any sort of movement around the map. Again, that's something I plan on expanding on as time goes on, but I think that's a good place to leave it for this video. I definitely think this wasn't a coincidence. I think this is a hint at the general style, or at least feeling, that they're going to try to recapture leading into the marketing for Modern Warfare 4. And I'm very curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, what are your thoughts on Modern Warfare 2019? Did you generally enjoy that game, or maybe not so much? And also, what are some hopes or expectations that you have for Modern Warfare 4 this year? Do you guys think they are really going to try to turn that perception around and kind of flip things on their head a little bit? Or maybe not? Do you expect it's going to be pretty much just business as usual for Call of Duty? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.